job.
Yeah.
And the best way to do your job is to stay straight and focused,
Yep.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
that's the same way
what,
with us
what I
reporting
say.
on it.
I say, my job is to collect facts, collect evidence, and present that to the DA's office for them to decide what to do with it. That's my only part. Okay.
Were you anxious about that because you knew perhaps the entire story wouldn't be told?
Was I anxious about it? I was hopeful that the whole story would be told, and I was hopeful that there'd be enough latitude for me to speak more freely about what I wanted to say. But I knew that I wouldn't, and I knew what testifying was, so I knew basically what I was going to be asked, and I knew that I'd have to stay within the boundaries of those questions.
And so, because there are boundaries that you have to live within, do you feel yesterday's verdict was incorrect, especially for Paul Tucci?
I think that the jury had to consider, what we put on as evidence, and I think that they did that, but I do think it was incorrect, and particularly with regards to Paul Tucci.
Why?
Because I believe Paul Tucci had a major part in this crime. I think that Paul Tucci, without any of the four of them, I think that this crime has far less chance of being successful.
And the sheriff has said he believes all. So, a lot of people think that somebody of Paul Tucci's size would be capable of doing the murder, whether it's to hit him over the head or to strangle him, and also to carry the body out of that house and drop it off in Yates County. What do you think?
Very particularly, Laura Rideout is about 106 pounds. Colin, not a very big guy either. And it's going to take more than one person, regardless of the size of Colin and Alex, to take that body out. Also, the force needed to crack someone's skull is pretty, that's a good amount of force. So, yeah, I would think that you could reasonably, draw the conclusion that Paul Tucci had some involvement there.
Do you and your investigators feel frustrated by the verdict because you feel that Paul Tucci has been let free?
It is frustrating. I mean, we put a lot of time. We've been on this case for about a year. Actually, almost a year to the day was when the verdict came down. And we've been working this case, every week at least for the entirety of that year. And so, yeah, we feel like we know what happened. We feel like we know all the pieces of the puzzle. And it's a little frustrating that sometimes you don't always get to hear all those pieces of the puzzle and things like this happen.
Who do you blame? Do you blame the district attorney for not presenting the evidence?
No, I don't blame, I don't blame anybody, really. The system is, and we have the system of law and the way that evidence goes in and what's deemed acceptable evidence and what's not acceptable evidence has been determined long before the district attorney, the judge, or our department became involved. So we have to play within those rules. And I know that they're trying to protect the innocent, but sometimes I think that we go a little too far in not allowing things to enter into evidence.
Why do you feel so strongly that Paul Tucci was there at the townhouse for the murder and also helped dump the body?
Well, as we went through the evidence and you look at what was presented, some of the things that were presented were the video of Laura Rideout and Paul Tucci at the Hudson Ave Walmart just hours prior to the occurrences. And what they're buying there is tarps and acid and bungee cords. The body's ultimately found wrapped in a tarp, that same tarp, with bungee cords, those same bungee cords, and the victim was disfigured with acid, that same acid. Now, a couple of hours later, about 12:30 in the morning, you have Colin Rideout at the Macedon Walmart, and he's buying a flat-headed spade, which is odd, the driest summer on record, and you're not going to dig a hole with that, but that's what they purchased. But he also purchases 4 sets of gloves. And in that video, you see Colin get out of the car, and you could see in the car, and although you can't identify who's in the car, you could definitely see 3 other people in that car. Now you got Colin, and that's at 12:30, and you got Colin wearing clothes that are pristine. No blood on those clothes at all. And when you look at the clothes that we presented in court, boy, they look like they're the same exact clothes, only they're in much different condition, right? They're covered with blood. So I'm going to say that murder happens after that Walmart purchase. Now we have 4 people in that car, and those 4 people, they buy 4 sets of gloves, and we recover 4 sets of footwear and a lot of clothing, and we have DNA from 4 sets of people collected during the various portions of this investigation, and those 4 people are Laura Rideout, Colin Rideout, Alex Rideout, and Paul Tucci. So I certainly believe that Paul Tucci was in that car and ultimately in that basement.
Do you believe that the jurors just didn't have enough, or they weren't secure in their decision? There was maybe that reasonable doubt, and they said that they better let Paul Tucci be free?
They had to have had some reasonable doubt. I don't know what that reasonable doubt might have been. I'm not sure where we or the district attorney's office could have made that case stronger. But, you know, obviously they believed they had some reasonable doubt, and obviously I believe that we had enough evidence.
Do you understand why the community says, how did this happen? How could only two of them been convicted of murder?
I do understand why the community would say that, and I understand why the jury, you know, based on the process that we have, how the jury might end up with that conclusion. But again, you know, sometimes in the public, they're privy to much more information than actually the jurors are. They get information that the jury doesn't get, whether it be through conversations with people, the news, or however else they might come across this information, which would allow them to believe, you know, something that might be different than what the jury got to see.
You dealt with all of these individuals. You were there at Mendon Ponds Park when the boys, you caught them disposing of evidence.
Yes, I was there.
What was the conversation like?
It was an interesting conversation. So what happened is that morning, our patrol gets called up to Mendon Ponds Park because somebody sees some suspicious activity. They see a male in the back of a silver Chrysler sedan, no front license plate. In the trunk, looks like he's wearing, I think she described him as medical gloves, playing with trying to put what she called a tarp back into the car. So our patrol shows up, and when they show up, they identify Colin and Alexander Rideout as the two people in that car. I was at the office still, and I got called, and so me and my partner headed out to Mendon Ponds Park to talk to him. When I first talked to Colin, he was very calm. His demeanor was calm. He certainly wasn't acting as if he was hiding from anything or anything suspicious was happening. And we talked for a little while. We talked about the background because, you know, we were investigating a missing person, and who else would I want to talk to other than the family, and particularly the sons and the close people close to the person. So of course I wanted to talk to Colin. He gave a little background to their family. He gave a little family history, and then he kind of ran down a little bit of what was, you know, what his previous day's events were. As that was happening, we were recovering the garbage, one of the garbage bags from the Devil's Bathtub from the pond there. So as that bag was coming up, I walked around to Colin. I put my arm around him and I said, "Colin, that bag's coming out of the pond. What's going to be in that bag?" That's the first time I saw him change from his regular demeanor to anything beyond, you know, everyday conversation. So as the bag, first he said, "I don't know." And as the bag's coming up, I said, "Colin, you know, it's better for you if you tell me what's in that bag. I think I know what's in that bag. It's better for you if you tell me what's in that bag before I see it than if I open that bag and find what I think I'm going to find in that bag." And at that point, he told me that there was probably cleaning products and acid bottles in the bag. And ultimately, that's what was in the bag. After that, I spoke to him a little more, and he told me that you know, he was at his father's house the previous day, and that he saw his mother and his brother cleaning up the basement.
That's it.
That's what he said he saw.
And your suspicion was already up at that point?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What about Alex?
Alex was a little different. He had much more emotion. He was much more ill at ease. He wanted to talk, and he was speaking pretty rapidly, and you know, he wanted to talk about how bad a person his father was, and he was led to believe that things happened with his father and to his family because of his father that we have no evidence of, and we aren't able to prove one way or another, but we have no reason to believe that these things happened. But Alex believed that his dad was not a good guy, and ultimately he continued. Alex, you know, never wanted to tell, you know, what he saw or what had happened, and he kept saying that his brother knows, or his brother's telling the truth, or, you know, he has a real undying love or respect for his older brother. So in the end, Alex did end up saying that he went down to the basement and he saw his brother and mother cleaning up blood in the basement. So Colin said he saw Alex, and Alex said he saw Colin, but both of them said Laura was in the basement cleaning up blood.
But that still doesn't mention Paul.
It doesn't, and they don't mention Paul. But remember, they're only talking about the cleanup portion after the event took place.
So do you think Paul Tucci killed Craig Rideout
I do.
by himself?
No. I think that it had to be more than one person. I think that it wouldn't have been possible for one person to choke him out using the garrote and strike him in the head using what I believe is an iron. And the reason I believe that is in close proximity to where this event took place, there's an ironing board, and on the back of that ironing board, there's a place for an iron. That iron's not there. But what we do recover is two plastic pieces that would form the point of an iron. No iron, but we have the plastic pieces and the missing ironing, missing iron from the ironing board.
And that can fracture a skull.
It could.
When you talked with Laura, you said that she was giving you too much information, answering questions you hadn't even asked. Is that a sign of guilt right off the bat when you're an investigator?
Well, it certainly makes me think that there's something more to the story than what you're telling me, because generally, as you ask questions and I ask questions, those questions don't get answered until you ask them. And in this case, she was very nervous, very fidgety to begin with, and as she got more relaxed, it didn't slow the pace of her speech, but she started talking and answering and telling me things that I hadn't asked for. She started telling me why their cell phones would ultimately show that they were at the Mendenhall house. She started telling me that she had been in Craig's van a week prior to clean the back of it, but I had never asked any of those questions, and she was giving excuses or reasons why certain things would be, or why her DNA or her evidence might show in different places.
That's a big clue right there.
I thought so.
Do you think she was the orchestrator of it?
I think her wishes were to move to North Carolina with the Tucci family and her children, and I think that she looked for a way in which she could make that happen. As Craig Rideout had custody of the two younger children, she wasn't likely to get custody of those two younger children, and I think she wanted the whole family in a Brady Bunch style to move down to North Carolina, and she needed a way to make that happen.
A lot of people say this was such a botched up crime. Like ridiculous to the point, but it's also so violent.
It's violent and it's botched up, but I think that's because they don't account for something. I think that what happens in their initial plan, I think they intend to choke Craig Rideout out and kill him. I think they think that's going to be a bloodless murder. I think they think they're going to be able to dispose of the body with no cleanup and no issues, and that they're going to be able to move to North Carolina with their cell phones showing the night before that they were home, with Craig's van parked at a park and ride in Pittsburgh, and with this email out there that accuses him of a lot of things that again, probably weren't true, but we don't know. And they were going to make people believe that he had just run away. And then when he was found, they would be able to say, look, we're in North Carolina. We were moving that day. Go back and look at our phone records. We were home that night packing. So I think that's where the botch comes in, is they didn't account for Craig Rideout fighting to live and Craig Rideout fighting for his life. And I think that became, a struggle that they didn't anticipate. And when that happened, I think that Paul Tucci got nervous and grabbed an iron and smashed Craig Rideout in the head in order to control him, while Colin Rideout strangled him to death. I think that the blood caused from that interaction is what ruined their plan, because now they have blood cleanup that they didn't account for, they have disposal that they didn't account for, and it probably screwed up their timeline, which maybe the farmer in Yates County never sees them. We don't know.
Right. And that was, and Robin.
And Robin, well, they're not there for Robin, Drew, if there's no cleanup.
But it starts the process.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, hi, Ray.
I
knew Mike had to step out. Right. So I think we're good. Was there anything else that you wanted to say about?
No, I'm good.
Because you've done a fabulous job of recounting it. I do need some two shots and a reversal, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Ray, I don't know if you've spoken to Ray, but he manages our newsroom, but he's also a fabulous photographer too. So.
All right, nice to meet you.
All right, nice to meet you.
Go ahead, you can come out. They're going to come up behind you. I do want to ask you, and I asked this of Shiano too, Mike Shiano.
Mm-hmm.
Why wasn't the sister charged? There's a sister in one of the videos, and if you tell me that a sister was back at the house texting.
I can't tell you why she wasn't charged. We knew about it. I knew that she was texting. I knew that she had set up an incident, in January of that year. to try to discredit Craig or make Craig look bad. You know, I can only say that there was no evidence of her being in the basement and no evidence of her making purchases or going to Yates County that would have directly led to Craig Drydout's murder.
And you can't prove that she was the one texting.
No, I cannot
Back
prove
at the
that she
house.
was the one texting. That's purely my speculation.
Mike Shiano thought probably 3 or 4 people could have been charged as accessories, you know, doing something to make this murder plan work.
Mm-hmm.
You agree? Between Tucci
I think
and
between the Tucci family and the Rideout family, yeah, I think that probably more people were involved. Whether they could be charged or not, that's a totally different, you know, animal altogether.
Yeah.
But were there more people involved? I believe there were more people involved.
How do you think they sleep at night?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what kind of person can be involved with the murder of the father of their children. I don't know what kind of person or what can happen that would taint a child's view of their father so badly that it comes to the point where they can do these really horrific and heinous acts to that person. I don't know how you would sleep at night, and I guess, as I've said many times to many people, you know, I guess if I understood it, that would be a problem for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 'cause you just got to do your job
Yep.
and try to see justice done. Do you think both Laura and Colin deserve their murder conviction?
Yes.
Do you think Alex should have been convicted of murder?
I think by my definition of murder and a strict definition of the strict penal law definition of murder, particularly Section 20, acting in concert to, I think he should have been convicted of murder. I understand how the jury came to the tampering with physical evidence conviction.
Sorry.
One
Yeah,
more over
give me
here
one
on
more.
this side, that'd be great. Just one more.
Yep.
Thank you. You're so well spoken. And it helps knowing the case. So inside and out. You all set? So you think Paul Tucci is the murderer?
I think Paul Tucci and Colin Rideout together, we were never able to determine which act actually caused the death. We know that both acts could, and we don't know which act actually did. I think Paul Tucci hit Craig Rideout in the head with an iron that caused a skull fracture that very well could have killed Craig Rideout.
And you think Colin was the garrote? Why?
I think Colin was a garrote, and that's, again, this is, when I speak about their individual acts, of course it's my speculation, but I believe that Colin's on the garrote because, his blood-soaked clothes and where the head would have been of the victim seems like that's where we would have had the blood soaking into the vehicle or into the clothes and into the jeans and the shirt.
Why did he hurt? His blood is on there too.
Colin?
Colin's blood. There were 2 forms of blood on those underwear and it was Craig's and Colin's. Besides DNA, unless I was misinterpreting it.
No, I don't think we ever had Colin.
Yeah.
We had DNA. I don't know that we had
Okay.
Colin's blood.
I'll have to look at my things. Well, you would know better because I was thinking then he means he got hurt.
Well, also though, so if Colin's blood is on those
Yeah.
Fruit of the Looms,
Yeah.
remember those are his clothes that he could have worn anytime or any place. So that doesn't mean that an injury necessarily occurred that night. But we also don't know to what extent Craig was able to fight back. Craig's fighting for his life. I don't know the extent that he's able to fight back, and maybe there is some injury. I didn't see any injury on Colin, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't.
Right, right. Are you upset? One more for Ray, if you can just stay on me for a second. Are you upset that Paul Tucci has gone free?
I'm not happy that Paul Tucci has gone free. I believe Paul Tucci is responsible, certainly, for the death of Craig Rideout in some fashion. I think that without any one of the 4 actors in this, I don't think the result's the same. I think they need all 4 in order for this to be carried out, and that would, by definition, make Paul Tucci guilty of murder.